Are you done with the brown?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get outlines of children.
Okay, I'm done.
Mom, I can't see.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. When you find the courage
That looks like
to
a
be
toilet
yourself,
with bunny ears. That looks like a toilet.
when you find the
That's
courage to
toilet
live
seat that don't
outside
have
of the
bunny
means of
ears.
where everybody else said you should live.
I need that. I need that.
Oh, I need a brush.
Stop it.
Quiet, please. If I can share a story with you today of my many, many stories, it'll be about how over the course of 5 years, 4 to 5 years, my life went on a transformation series, not by force, but by what was circumstantially done to us, forced by circumstances and situations. And anytime you're forced into something, you figure out what to do. For my Bible scholars out there, as well as myself, the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. I'm going to say that one more time. The devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And the devil is anything that allows itself to use by negative energy or low vibrational energy. The devil is an ancient serpent, an ancient deceptive soul. And he comes to kill, steal, and destroy, especially light people, especially chosen people. I would like to share with you a few series of events that I suffered through, overcame, recognized the patterns, and learned how to choose healthy. And sometimes choosing healthy is saying no. If you don't know how to say no, you fall for anything. I didn't have any boundaries, so I was falling for everything. I didn't know what boundaries were until my circumstances taught me boundaries. So in 2020, remember, the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. I realized in the relationship I was in that it was no longer healthy for me. I didn't like the way I was feeling. I didn't like the way I was being treated. I didn't like what was happening. Remember, the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And if something's coming to kill you, if something's coming to destroy you, if something's coming to steal from you, you do everything to prevent that. And here are some preventative measures I have taken since 2020, actually 2019, to escape things that came to kill, steal, and destroy. Not just my physical things, but my spiritual being, who I am. In 2020, I suffered financial abuse. I suffered psychological abuse. I suffered at risk of being homeless. I suffered mental health issues. I suffered during the pandemic, where I lost plenty of jobs during the pandemic because of the type of work I was working. I lost child care support because of the pandemic and no additional child care support outside of the pandemic. I lost educational opportunities because of the pandemic. I had just enrolled in school. In 2020, I recognized, I'm like, okay, I don't like my life, and how can I make it better? I didn't like constantly begging. I didn't like constantly being placed in poverty-stricken situations. So even during the pandemic, right before the pandemic, I signed up for college. But because the pandemic came, it prevented me from continuing school. I didn't have the necessary tools, college tools, whether it was computer, notebook, laptop, materials. So in 2020, I had to forfeit education. And I'm sharing these events with you because I want quiet, please. I'm sharing these events with you because it's a pattern of events, a series of events that kept happening the same way. And I had to realize that it was a cycle that I had to break. So when I realized I was in an unhealthy relationship, I'm like, hey, this is what needs to be done. And in 2020, I went through significant changes, significant loss. Like I've said, loss of work, loss of employment, loss of mental health, confusion. When you lack support, there's gonna be confusion. And the only person I had supporting me was the person I was escaping.
Like he just ate some of the market to get it.
In 2020, I made a decision. My children were very. You can move out of my. My children were very small, and I said, you know what? I'm going to change my life. I'm not going to stay in the cycle of gaslighting, the cycle of manipulation, the cycle of control, the cycle of financial abuse, the cycle of lack of having support, isolation. These are some things that transformed my life forever. It transformed the spiritual part of me, the physical part of me. In 2020, in 2022, after 2020, I end up being back with my spouse. The psychological abuse I was trying to escape, the environment I was trying to escape, I end up being back with him because of environmental circumstances and pressures of a program I was in 2020. I ended up being back with my spouse and giving it another try. I'm like, okay, maybe it is me. Remember, the devil comes to kill, steal, destroy. And anything targeting you to make it feel like you are the problem, that's an issue. So in 2020, I found myself facing the same things I faced in 2020. Financial abuse, psychological abuse. I was involved in a lot of abusive relationships. I was involved in codependent relationships, trauma bonding relationships, which took a lot of my money. It took a lot of my time, and it took a lot of support from me supporting myself and my priorities. I lost work in 2020. For 2022, I forfeited my job. Because once I got back in a toxic relationship and a toxic environment, I realized, hey, I cannot live, I cannot breathe, I cannot have my being in this type of environment. So I forfeited my job, making good money. I sold my car. I moved back to our hometown, Florida. I filed for the divorce. I got a protection order because of his psychological stability and others around me. In 2022, I went to my mom's. My kid's health was attacked. My son was in the hospital for pooping issues. My daughter was having asthma attacks. This is all events that took place while escaping toxicity. I escaped it and was constantly forced back into it by people, places, and things, by agencies, by friends, by churches, by people who believe that I was supposed to be in this environment and relationship. I was manipulated, gaslit, I was lied to. I was family isolated, friends isolated because there was rumors passed around about me. I started my journey of escaping toxicity 5 years ago. And it never stopped. I just had to see through the lies, through the deception, through the illusions. And it didn't stop there. So 2022 came. I picked up my whole life, quit my job, sold my second car I had, and I said, okay, I'm going to start over. I'm going to get the life of peace that I deserve. But because I'm a loving and forgiving woman, I kept listening to what everybody else said around me. How many of you guys listen to what everybody else says around you and not listen to yourself? In 2022, my mind was disassociated from my body because of so much psychological abuse that was being placed upon me. Nobody believed what I was going through. Nobody believed what I was running from. Many say, oh, she running from herself. I was never running from myself. I was running from others who was trying to destroy me emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, sexually. In the year of 2023 came around. I conquered each time I separated myself from toxicity and I was forced back into it. I conquered it each and every time I was forced back into it. I was forced to have a more emotional intelligence, more stability, more emotional stability, more in control of my thoughts, in control of my emotions, being able to identify what's for me and what's not, who's for me and who's not for me. Nobody believed it. And it wasn't for people to believe my story. It was for me to continue to transform my life. You need to move. It was for me to continue to transform my life in the midst of escaping the toxic environment, situations, people, and things. In 2023, it didn't stop there.
I need to go to the bathroom.
After being forced back into a toxic relationship and environment,
It looks pretty good.
I mean, so much of what I have to say is so big, it's so gritty, it's so meaty. Because I know I'm not the only one who struggles with instability of housing. And instability of housing wasn't just because I wanted to. It's because I had needed to escape toxicity. I needed emotional, physical stability. I needed emotional wellness. And when you recognize you need all those things, you do something about it. So in 2022, when I made that escape to leave a toxic relationship, marriage, people, places, things, somehow I was forced back into it. And how was I forced back into things? Doors was closed in my face. In 2020, I lost the opportunity living in a program and having to go back and live with my spouse. In 2022, when I decided to make that escape and go back to Florida, shelters closed their doors on me and said there was no availability. Public schools closed their doors to me and my children and said there was no availability. I was forced to go back and live in my car and suffer emotional abuse alone. And so anytime someone's suffering at a significant cost at that rate that I was suffering, you look to alleviate it. So what do? You settle. So 2023 rolls around. I went back to Florida December of 2022. So we into the year 2023. I'm thinking I'm going crazy. I'm thinking a whole lot happening to me. We were back to hotel hopping. My mental health was being, you will leave me alone, honey. My mental health was being attacked. My kids' mental health was being attacked. Our physical bodies were being attacked. So I quit my job in 2022 to, I forfeited stability that I did have to remove myself from the emotional instability that I was living in, the emotional chaos and turmoil I was living in, gaslighting, control, manipulation, making me feel smaller. So because I was forced back into the environment, I had to adjust. Here we are in 2023, more hotel hopping, more mental health projections. Projection mean people thinking, man, I hope she lose her mind. I hope she do this. I hope she do that. It did not work. I literally lost my job in 2023. We had came back from Florida and I tried to get on my feet. I had started a job at a company called Art and Courts. And all my life, I've been a caregiver. Take care of people very well with all my heart, mind, and soul, as I would take care of myself or any soul. Well, I realized from me being in escaping abusive situations and constantly being placed back in it, my nervous system was off place. My mind was discombobulated. I was anxious, worried, from feeling overlooked, from being abused, from being burdened, from not being understood. I couldn't even hold a job. And that's what toxicity will do to you. It'll make you feel like you're losing your mind. So what did I do? When I worked that job, I had to quit. I said, I need to go get some help. Because at this point, I don't. So that was another job that I quit by choice to go get the proper mental help. I'm like, there is a source of my pain. There was a source of my mental health going back and forth. There is a source to this. And the source was escaping not just one person, but escaping the people connected to that person, the toxicity connected to that person, the anger, the malice, the envy, the jealousy, the codependency, the trauma bonding. In 2023, I had signed up for college again. I'm like, okay, this defeated me. But what can I do to assist me in every defeat? So here I am in 2023, walked away from a job to go stabilize my mental health. Once I did self-help check-in, I'm like, okay, I think I did that for a few weeks. I'm like, I don't need this anymore. I got on medication to ease me off the depression, the anxiety, the PTSD I was experiencing because of the previous events in my life. And I continued at my attempts to leave a toxic relationship. And that affected my home life. In 2023, I still end up being homeless, shelter living, lack of support, parental support, family support, community support. In 2023, my life was in shambles. 2022, my life was in shambles. 2020, my life was in shambles. And each and every time as my life was in shambles, I got up with a new challenge and a new plan. But yet stuff was constantly being taken from me. Living in a household where there's constant disagreement, that's abusive. I didn't like constant disagreements. I didn't like being forced and pulled and told what to do and how to do it and that I'm wrong. So what did I do? I escaped to a shelter. Because I'm saying, as we all know, domestic violence is not just a physical thing. Anybody who jeopardizes your emotional safety, your psychological, your mental, anybody who make you second guess yourself, anybody who make you worry and be anxious for nothing, that's a problem. So in 2023, I moved to a shelter and I'm like, hey, this is what I'm running from. This is the things I have already done to bring stability, emotional and mental, physical stability to me and my children. My car windows that I had got busted out in 2023. I was forced to go live in my car. In 2023, I stole something out of safety because I was living in my car and got arrested for that. I was left alone with 3 kids with no one protecting us out in the open. I had to pay for that. I had to explain to my kids, even out of desperation, don't go in the store and take something because there's a price for it. I had so much backlash and retaliation because the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy because I choose to live a healthy life. I lived in shelters in 2023 and 2024. When I moved to these shelters, these are places that supposed to bring emotional stability, physical stability, support, guidance. Well, when I moved to shelters to escape the toxic relationship, I was met with more backlash and retaliation because of jealousy, because of envious spirits, because of people don't understand me. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't have to be represented, that I don't deserve to be represented, that my children didn't deserve to be represented in the right way. I almost lost my mental health again. I had to say, hold on, this is a target on my mental health. Anytime your home life is constantly being displaced, that is a target on your mental health. And I realized that because I went and did inpatient and outpatient help. I've done medication therapy. I've done all the things I needed to do in the spirit and out of the spirit. In 2023, I think that was 2022, was in 2024. These past 4 to 5 years of my life was significantly tough. I was getting tickets when I wasn't even unemployed about my license, getting in trouble for that. It's like every corner I turned while living in the car came with hate, came with envy. And it's not fair. It wasn't fair to me and my children. But these events transformed my life in ways I can't even imagine. In 2023, I had loss of resources just like I had loss of resources in 2020 and 2022. These are all tactics to keep you in a bind, to keep me in a bind, to not go forward. But each and every time, each year that went by, I transformed little by little. I transformed my body, mind, and soul. In 2024, I end up being homeless again, car living again, shelter living again. We lived at 5 different shelters. And each shelter, I felt more pain than anything. And a shelter is supposed to be a safe haven for your emotions, a safe haven for your physical, a safe haven for your children. Even with living in a shelter, I had to pick up my bags and flee because of the emotional instability. What did you do to that camel? I was violated so many times. Room checks at shelters. Unnecessary. I'm talking about overly room checks, overly stalking, overly write ups, overly watching me and the children for what we're doing. People like to bully you, but they don't like to respect the victim who's being bullied. All of these were tactics to keep me away from myself, keep me away from my higher self, keep me away from believing in myself. Watch out, baby girl. I believe in safety. I believe in mental safety. I believe in emotional safety. I believe in physical safety. I believe in spiritual safety. I'm the master of all of them. The enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And that's what was happening in my life. My life was threatened, and I did something about it each and every time. But when you have entities and energies that do not like you, they work together. Demons work together, they don't flock alone. I was met with warfare on top of warfare, and it transformed me. It helped me shed old forms of myself, things that I'm not willing to negotiate. I'm not willing to negotiate my mental, my physical, and my emotional health to stay in environments that I have outgrown. People have forced me into environments that I have outgrown, that my kids have outgrown. 2022, 2020 through 2024, what all had in common was homelessness, car living, shelter living, police threats, how do you say that word? Policed by the community, like police community, like how people watch you because they don't understand you. All of these things cause significant pain. Living in a car causes emotional pain, emotional turmoil, emotional instability. I was met with DCFS 2020, 2023, 2024. I was met with schools trying to take my children. All of that transformed me to a stronger, wiser, beautiful, resilient mother. Because in the midst of all of these things that has happened in my life, each and every single year, I started to see people different, things different, and fully depend on my spirituality, depend on my spiritual abilities. Because the spirit is stronger than the physical. The Bible says the weapon of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God, through the pulling down of strongholds. These were strongholds in my life. Even the jobs I was working were strongholds. And with each stronghold came a challenge. And I had to learn how to transform my environment, whether it was living in a car, whether it was living at a shelter, whether it was out at the park during the daytime, sleeping in parking lots. I didn't swallow my pain. I cried. I let the tears out. But I also allowed myself a chance to transform my mindset. I allowed myself a chance to grow. I allowed myself healing. And in that, I was able to hone in on my innate spiritual abilities. It's how I survived every job loss, every kicked out shelter, displacement from my home, displacement from my car. I even had lost my car. All of these tactics was to disassociate me from myself, disassociate me from spirit, to stay in the same environment. It was an illusion. And people don't like when you break illusions. Every attempt to leave a toxic marriage, a toxic relationship, people, places, things, coworkers, past jobs. Remember, energy doesn't die, it transfers. And I was able to witness from 2020 to 2025. These were all spiritual transfers. Threats on my life, threats on my kids' life. It doesn't feel good when you have your life out in the open, just vulnerable, personal belongings. With every challenge came a barrier, and with every barrier, I found a way. When I was forced to live in my car each and every year in these years, I bought an airbag, I bought a toilet, I bought this little box thing that you have, make sure you have electricity. And I did not complain. I asked God to help me with the storm until the storm was over. And I finally was able to get to a place to meet me here, head level. All of these events that took place in my life was to stop, and events that may take place in your life, is to stop your leadership skills. It's to stop you from believing and trusting in you. I knew what I was living was toxic because I've already lived in toxic environments growing up. And now that I have children, I am responsible for removing them from toxic environments and identify when they're being psychologically, mentally, emotionally, physically, or sexually abused. You are responsible once you know. You can live in the mess or transform the mess. People pretty much threw shit on my pain and my children's pain, door after door, home after home. And it's not even about people, it's about a collective body of people. But that never stopped my drive, it never stopped my tenacity, it never stopped my desire for inner growth. And it was because of desire for inner growth, despite what was happening around me, I was able to survive. I had to become a doctor for my kids when we had no doctor available. I had to become the therapist when anxiety or panic attacks were happening in the car because my kids and I were maybe unsure of what was happening in our lives. I had to talk them through it. I had to pray them through it. I had to go in different places and environments and transmute all the negative energy around us and create a safe environment. Safe environment starts with the mind first. And when I know that my environment is not safe, I escape from it. When you know your environment is not safe, you escape from it. That's what you have first responders for. They come and rescue you out of environments that threat your life. And my life was being threatened by family, by friends, past coworkers, churches. And each and every time I went to source, people poke a bear, but don't like the bear's response. It's kind of like poking at me, bullying me in every situation to constantly stay in the same poverty-stricken environment or same cycles of mental and psychological abuse. That's like poking the bear. And each time I got poked, took me deeper into the spirit. Because the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to pull down every stronghold. I had strongholds in my life that I needed God to help me rid of. And how many know that trauma bonding and codependency goes hand in hand? Trauma bonding is you got a similar story of abuse and you link up and you become friends. But it's only to probably talk about the same situation, person, thing, but never elevate yourself past the pain. That's trauma bonding. And never changing the situation. Always staying in a catastrophizing mindset. Codependency, where someone relies on your abilities and only do 10% of what they need to be doing for themselves. You ever been forced in the dark? You quickly go to find the light so you can see your way. Those were in the dark experiences for me. Those were wilderness experiences for me where me and my babies were placed in the dark over a course of 5 to 6 years to figure out on our own. And each time I was left to figure out on my own gave me new confidence level. For this is the confidence